Hey, it's Dwayne again for the second half of this lesson 21 on relapse. And so, last week we talked about, being on our guard because the holiday season is coming up. I mean, they've already got out all the Halloween stuff and had it out for a while now, and here in just a few more days they'll be putting out the Christmas stuff if they haven't already. And so you're going to be starting to hear that Christmas music soon if you haven't already. And a lot of memories and a lot of things that cause a certain percentage of the population to struggle even more this time of year. So it's time to be on guard. 'Tis the season to be on guard, and 'tis the season to spend even more time with God. Okay. So Principle 7 says, reserve a daily time with God for self-examination, Bible reading, and prayer in order to know God and His will for my life and to gain the power to follow His will. Step 11 says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. And then Colossians 3:16 says, let the message of Christ dwell among you richly. Christ and God is all through those two things there. So it's an important time to keep them by your side and to reserve that daily prayer time and not to get so busy where you're not. And so be careful. So we're going to do an acrostic this week, okay, for the lesson. I'm going to try to get on through this so it won't be too terribly long. But the acrostic is where we take one letter of a word and we make a little lesson out of it. So basically reserve or relapse is the word. So we're going to start out with the R, stands for reserve a daily and quiet time with God. And then the evaluate means we're going to evaluate some things in our life. Evaluate our weaknesses, evaluate our strengths, so that we can mitigate those weaknesses and encourage those strengths. Number 3, listen to Jesus. I'm going to say that again, listen to Jesus. Okay. Number 4, alone and quiet time. Don't get so busy that you don't have some alone and quiet time, which is going to relax you and calm your mind and bring some peace upon you. And, be quiet, and listen to God. Know that He's there. Number 5, or the fifth one is P for plug. In relapse, plug into God's power. You can't do this by yourself. You need God to help you, and God is all-knowing. He's the widest, entity in the universe, and He's a source of knowledge, and He's a source of love. And so there's reasons why we need to plug into God's power. S in relapse, slow down. Okay, and then E is enjoy your growth. You can reflect on where you've been and where you've come, and I'm not saying be arrogant about it. I'm just saying reflect on it, and then realize that it's a good thing. And if it's a good thing, then that means that you're going to want to keep it and not go back. Okay, so we're going to talk about this reserve thing for a second here. Okay. During the holidays, you got these old hurts and hang-ups and habits. The alcoholic, it's increased risk to go back to drinking. The overeater puts on weight. You got all this food in front of you. The gambler goes back to losing his wages in Las Vegas or wherever the casino is in the area. And the workaholic fills up a schedule to keep his mind busy where he doesn't have to think about anything. Codependent goes back to an unhealthy relationship. And the list goes on and on and on and on. And so Matthew, we talked about this last week about how Satan tempted Jesus, and he tempted him with things that he knew was within his reach, and that's what he's going to do with you, things that are within your reach, and they'll come right up to you, and it'll be tempting. And so learning how to say no and meaning it, and following through on no, whether it hurts somebody's feelings or not, is important. Boundaries are important. Being able to say no and not caring if someone gives you slack about saying no is important. Okay. Mark 14:38 says, watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. You know what your weaknesses are. Watch. Don't be ignorant to it. They're there. Write it in your journal. Write it down on a piece of paper. You know what your weaknesses are. And if you know what your weaknesses are, you can write down mitigation strategies to try to stay away from them. I mean, if you're still weak as far as drinking, and you've only stopped drinking a few months, and the holidays are coming up, and it's putting increased pressure on you, then that gas station or that store that has the alcohol, where you've got a habit and ingrained in your brain to go down a certain aisle and get something and put in your buggy. Don't go to the store. Don't go down the aisle. Don't even go down the store, and don't go to a different store that has more of the things that's going to tempt you. It might be years down the road before you're strong enough to go down that avenue. If you got a problem with women, stay away from pretty women. If you have that weakness, Jesus could hang around all kinds of women, but it didn't tempt him. Okay, and so he wasn't even tempted by the things that were within his reach. But women probably may not have been one of those strong weaknesses in his life, because Satan didn't put a pretty woman in front of him. He had 3 shots at him, and he knew he put the 3 things that he thought he could get him with. Okay, but you're different. Your situation may be, if you're a woman, it may be some guy that's coming up that's telling you how beautiful you are, and that's smiling and acting like he's all into you. That may be your weakness. And so if you're a guy, it's the same thing. Beautiful woman coming around you and giving you compliments, and the little sparkles increasing in her eyes, so be strong enough where you can say no in a nice way without them feeling like they've been rejected, so to speak. Because that causes problems with them, and it's something they may not be used to. They may not be used to being told no, and so. So again, we go back to be able to say no, and set a boundary, and be okay with that. And whether they get upset about you saying no or not, it doesn't matter. You think Jesus cared when he told Satan no? You think he cared that Satan was going to be mad with him because he said no? No, he set a boundary. He said no, and he meant no, and he didn't care what Satan thought about him saying no. And that's the way you have to be about temptation. Okay, is you have to be able to say no. And if somebody else gets their feelings hurt, well, that's not your fault. Okay, that's not your problem. That's their problem. Let them deal with their problems, and you handle your own stuff. Okay, and so. Matthew 4:10 says, get out of here. The scriptures say, worship only the Lord God, obey only him. And so, not only did Jesus didn't care what Satan cared about, whether or not he said no or not, or if he was mad that he said no, he said, get out of here. So, anyway. So the next thing, the E, evaluate your heart. And, this inventory process, we've talked about that. We talked about the flour sifter, a week or two ago, where you put the flour in there and it's got the lumps, and you've got some stuff that's in there that you don't want. And so you turn the little handle, and the pure flour comes out, and it leaves the lumps behind, and that's what that's doing, Getting the lumps out of your life, getting the lumps out of your heart, getting the lumps out of your mind. So Romans 12:3-17 says, be honest in your estimate of yourselves, hate what is wrong, stand up on the side of the good, love each other, be patient in trouble, do things in such a way that everyone can see you are honorable. That may take you a while to do some of those things, but it's something to strive for. So the L in relapse is listen. L for listen. Listen to your higher power, Jesus Christ. I've told the story about the train several times, which represented my life and my light on it, and how Jesus came onto the train, and how I asked him to help me. And then he followed me, along the process where I was going to do what he told me to, but then I tried to do it by myself, and so he was just standing over to the side, and so I realized that he was going to have to come a little bit closer to me to help me do it. And so that was part of that process. Listen to your higher power. Be sure you don't get so busy that you don't have your daily time to talk to God, and make sure he's in your life. Okay. So the next thing is, let's see, First Thessalonians 5:21 says, um, basically, don't be gullible. Okay. So now we're going to alone. The A for relapse stands for alone, and have some quiet time. And so, you know, first step 11 says we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. Our conscious contact with God. Um, be aware that you're talking to Him. Ask Him to be in your life. Ask Him to stay with. This isn't something you do once. This is something you do on a regular basis. Because we're surrounded by worldly things. We're surrounded by things that can take us down a bad path, and so we're constantly being tempted by different things. So it's good to have God in our life all the time, as a part of us all the time. So it's a continuous thing, and it's a conscious thing, and it's a subconscious thing as well. You want Him to be so much in your life that it becomes also a subconscious thing, not just a conscious thing. So Psalm 46:10 is where God tells us to be still and know that I am God. Now, in order to be still and know that He's God, you have to slow down and look around. And when you look around, you have to look around in the way that you're looking for God, which means you're looking for love, and not in all the wrong places. Okay, you're looking for love, and you're not seeing hatred everywhere, because there is hatred everywhere. So you don't want to let all that saturate you. You want to look for the good things in life, and reflect on the good things, because there is a lot of bad. You don't want to always reflect on this. You always want to have a more positive outlook. Try to have a more positive outlook. Psalms 1 through 3 says, happy are those who find joy in obeying the law of the Lord. They study it day and night. They're like trees that grow beside a stream and bear fruit at the right time. The closer you are to God, the more you're going to have fruit in your life. The more you're going to thrive, the more you're going to cast shade to others. If you've ever walked along a stream and noticed those big trees there that are reaching down, and they've got the water's there all the time, and the nourishment is there all the time, and the soil is just extremely good along the stream. It's very fertile, very good. And so someone that reads, the Bible, on a regular basis, and prays to God on a regular basis is going to be like that tree along the stream. It's going to cast shade and coolness on people when they're hot, and it's going to produce fruit at just the right times, because it's going to be conscious of when that right time is. And so that's very important. Philippians 4:6 says, Paul tells us to pray about everything, ask for God's perfect will in our life, okay? Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God your needs, and don't forget to thank Him for His answers. His answers, His perfect will, not mine. So many times we do these selfish prayers, praying for our will, when we should be praying more for God's will. And that's a little bit different, and it probably will bring some different results when you start praying for God's will. And ultimately, it will be better for you, in the long run. It'll be better for you and those around you anyway. So, I always said, and I came to this decision later in life, or came to this knowledge later in life, but if you ask God about His thoughts on the major decisions and even some of the smaller decisions in your life, then you're going to make less mistakes, okay? And so there's going to be less repentance and less problems in your life if you get God involved and don't make impulsive decisions.